And here to talk more is Aaron Easterly, co-founder and CEO of Rover. Aaron, thanks so much for joining. Why was it necessary to go public via the SPAC route versus the traditional IPO?
With the pandemic, there's a unique opportunity for our business. We see the increase in pet adoption and think that there's a once in a blue moon opportunity to grow the business. But our business was hit by the pandemic, so we wanted to go through a process that allowed us to share more information with investors. The SPAC process allowed to do that versus the traditional IPO.
And I'm just looking at stats right now. Pet adoption overall has spiked. Rover's new customer daycare bookings for puppies up 64% compared to the first quarter of 2019. So of your company's services, which do you anticipate are going to be leading to some growth areas and increased revenue?
Sure. We think that the overnight travel segment of our business is most likely to recover first and most aggressively. We're pleased that we're also seeing records in some of our daytime services like dog daycare and dog walking. At the same time, we think that people will feel more comfortable traveling before office environments come back en masse.
I want to talk with you more about that pattern. How has the vetting and training of Rover pet sitters changed over the course of this pandemic? And you mentioned some trends that are pretty interesting. I think the fact that people are willing to get back and travel for a short stint of time versus going back to offices completely like we used to see pre-pandemic.
With regards to the sitters and the service providers, we've seen a large amount of sitters come back to the platform after having a little bit less volume during the pandemic. We've also seen new people join, and to the degree people are working partly from home, that's great for us. People are home and can take care of dogs and pets, which is nice. But we do expect that there'll continue to be an evolution of behavioral changes with consumers, and some offices may not come back 5 days a week. And we'll support that as well. We think our business is in good position to do well regardless of how much time people spend in offices. If they spend more time at home, we think people want to travel more often, and most of our business is related to the travel industry.
It's fascinating because of your model and the flexibility that is offered for these particular roles. I'm wondering, are you seeing any sort of signs of the labor shortage that we're seeing in other sectors of the economy?
For the most part, no. Our sitters can do Rover in addition to their day job. You can be a stay-at-home parent and have a dog in your house while you're home. You can be a software engineer and have a dog in your house while you're home. So Rover is not done at the expense of other money-making opportunities in the same way that like an Uber might be or a DoorDash might be. If you're driving a car, you better be focused on nothing but driving the car. But it's possible to have dogs or cats in your house and go about your life as you normally would. So we have a slightly different labor dynamic than some of those other businesses.
That being said, do you think that there will be an increased demand that your Rover sitters will be seeing as people are getting out and traveling? Are you already seeing that increased demand? And are there patterns that you're kind of predicting over the course of the next year or so?
Yes, in Q2 we saw a really aggressive re-ramp in the business. Our June numbers were up from a sales perspective, almost 40% versus 2019 already. We had originally expected this year to be kind of a tale of two halves, where the first half was really pandemic impacted, and the second half of the year would be recovery and eventually exceed 2019. What we really saw is we saw that recovery aggressively in Q2 and set records in both sales and new customer acquisition in June.
What do you see as the biggest challenges coming up here within the industry when it comes to pet care?
Well, with new pet owners, there's a large amount of pet owners trying to make decisions on food and training and services for the first time. So making sure those people are equipped to get their questions answered is really important. We think in general, with the humanization of pets, there's a trend towards more hands-on care, more human attention, healthier eating options. better ways to train. So we think that tendency for people to view their animals as their children will continue to happen, and you just support those people in a different way than we might have supported pet owners from 30 or 40 years ago.
And Aaron, before we let you go, also wondering, so many pet care companies within the industry had to move quickly during this pandemic and make their services available for customers during things like lockdowns and COVID restrictions. What do you see as the future of the pet care landscape?
Well, it's definitely the case that some of the traditional options where you might take your dog to brick and mortar doggy daycare or overnight boarding facility were hard hit by the pandemic and those restrictions and people traveling less. One of the nice things about Rover's model is we're relatively capital light. It's a peer-to-peer model where most people choose to board their animals in other people's homes. So we don't have the same fixed cost structure that might be associated with a physical premise. And so that is a more dynamic and easier to scale up and down with things like restrictions. So it's not great for our business if people aren't traveling and aren't leaving the home, but in some ways we're a lot more flexible than traditional options.
Got it. All right. That's Aaron Easterly, co-founder and CEO of Rover. Congratulations again on the market debut.